context from John Wick's 1 to 4. So John's worked in the underworld as a hitman, and he left to marry his wife, but he keeps being brought back into this dark world of crime in each film for different reasons. By the fourth film, he's been excommunicated by the community for killing a member of the High Table on the Continental Hotel grounds. They're supposed to be neutral, and there's a bounty on his head, and hitmen are after him. Sense of noir. So the genre of noir has been influential throughout history and continues to be used today. Each time Wick tries to escape the life left behind, he's drawn back in, and this just kind of represents that persistence. There's a lot of wide angles and lenses in the film, and that follows the noir conventions and creates an uncomfortable atmosphere. And the composition in this scene seems to be balanced to highlight the level playing field assumed by the arrangement.
Oppositional light and dark lighting gives film noir its certain cinematic characteristics that are stylistic of the genre. Noir lighting is an expression of characters' inner psychology. The film uses conventional noir models in the lighting, but expands on them through bright neons. Chiaroscuro lighting is similar to noir through its striking shadows, but replaces contrasting black and white with opposite colors like green and red. The strong neon colors are especially prevalent at the Continental, a Japanese setting that leans into the realm of techno-orientalism with its neon lighting. So techno-orientalism is the use of Asian aesthetics in cyberpunk, futuristic, and dystopian settings. There is a long and deep Euro-American tradition of using Asian symbols such as neon signs with East Asian lettering to express those feelings about what the future holds, including globalization and the threat of a takeover from the East. This can be traced back to World War II, when European countries' control was spreading, while simultaneously seeing the expansion of imperialist countries like Japan. European countries feared that they would be outpaced in both technological and political advancements. Noir Orientalism articulates visually and thematically the drama of the otherness without reifying static categories. Many films staged criminal sins and dramatic denouement in Oriental settings. When neo-noirs inspired by noir Oriental texts project darkness onto the Japanese other, they reveal not just wartime Hollywood's xenophobia, but also their deep-seated fear of the Japanese American citizen in their mindset. So when the Continental falls under attack, Koji calls his guild to arms. In a bizarre contrast to the futuristic neon setting, their armories are revealed to be full of bows, arrows, throwing stars, and samurai swords. So this construction creates a particular caricature of Japan in John Wick 4, as if the only way that Japanese characters could have a place in any action movie is by appearing in, well, 16th century weapons and armory. When films with a wide global reach reference dynamics of Orientalism, they reinforce an unsettling ideology that others these countries beyond the West as places of archaic tradition that can only become civilized through contact with Western protagonists. The characters in these stories are only permitted a minority space, even though the film is exploring their home country. Throughout the war, anti-Japanese sentiment was virulent, but it reached its paranoid apex after Pearl Harbor when Japanese Americans were labeled as enemy aliens. The 1940s noirs resurrect the racist notion of a yellow peril with its oriental settings and wicked Chinatown, tapping into wartime-inspired Asian terrors, and a part of Orientalism is also grouping the East and its many cultures into one type of enemy alien. So noir surreptitiously feeds upon these terrors to give a xenophobic zing to its narrative. These neo-noirs recuperate figures that signify collapse of racial borders. They simultaneously insist upon the importance and specificity of physical space as spatial borders are relentlessly erected, radically marked, and ultimately crossed. So we can see this in the use of maps in tracking John Wick. Like Touch of Evil, John Wick 4 deliberately undermines the relevance of spatial borders. He is constantly in motion, able to travel around the world in seconds. Such spatial orientation and its effective racialization in the film confirms Neo-Noir's claim that Touch of Evil aimed to offer a liberal and progressive explorations of race hatred. John Wick 4 exists in an era past Touch of Evil and thus is progressive in its representation on screen by showing people of color as main characters. These newer films beg a larger and more specific conceptualization within both the social-political climate and racialized history of the noir. The film never visually shows John Wick flying in a plane, but the plane is obviously his main mode of transportation as a global assassin. So the common noir vehicle is secondary to the ranges of a plane. The car is used in the chase scene as escape. However, vehicles are also secondary to his freedom. Wick treats cars as disposable. They serve no value to him as he often destroys them for his own gain. Unlike the typical noir trope of relying on the car as a vehicle for escape, Wick relies on his own 2 feet and guns to achieve freedom. The film is not told retrospectively, so Wick only has 103 lines and nearly a third of them consist of just one word.
You think your wife can hear you?
No.
Off-angle compositions create spaces that seem to be unsafe and unstable environments in the film. So the archetypical noir shot is extreme high-angle long shot, an oppressive and fatalistic angle that looks down on its helpless victim to make it look like a rat in a maze. Claustrophobic elements including doors, windows, stairways, metal bed frames, and shadows separate a character from others and their world and emotion. So the Marquise is just looking through the window and is Venetian blinds. The blinds represent prison in noir. Winston, he's trapped and his friend is dead and his hotel is gone, it's been blown up, and he's just powerless in this situation. And then some noir themes, anti-hero and alienation. So Wick is known as the boogeyman. He's a murderer, but the audience is rooting for him anyway, and revenge is a theme in the film, just because Wick's motivations are mainly revenge-based. Winston asks John to fight the Marquise because he wants revenge on the man who killed his friend. John was also an orphan, and his wife is dead, and he just belongs nowhere and has no family, and this is represented in the transitory spaces. Wick is often in transitory spaces because it's not safe for him to be in the same place for more than a little bit because so many people are after him. And the only home scene in the film is one that's used for a fight. It's abandoned, and there's a depth of field carrying focus to every object in the frame, including the background in the scene. The scene is shot in a unique way. The camera moves from room to room, and the audience can see the walls and rooms from a bird's eye view, as if there's no ceiling, and it's a set, and the audience can see the boundary between the rooms, and it just adds the illusion of temporary spaces.
The production code ended in 1968 and governed the golden age of noir's materials on screen. However, John Wick 4 exists outside of this era and still displays the persistence of Catholic motifs in noir. So for religious settings, the film begins in Wadi Rum Desert, Jordan, which is a site of spiritual significance with various Christian references. And there's also churches acting as safe spaces where John can have neutral talks with Cain, but also settings of gang violence. Relationship with respect and religion in noir is complicated in this neo-noir film, where John's family, the Rosca-Roma, are also associated with Roman Catholicism. Thus, these Catholic themes of punishing the sinners was ingrained in noir due to the production code and pushed the existentialist themes. However, this film exists outside of the production code, and yet it still exhibits the conventions that restrain noir. The ending is resolved through a religious duel, so the film intertwines Catholic traditions as gang hierarchies.
Costumes. A lot of dark clothing and dark suits. The Bowery King gives Wick a suit and he says it's perfect for a funeral, which just shows that fatalism. Basically, Wick's funeral, it's his last stand. Mood, the Bowery King meets up with Winston as he mourns the loss of his hotel, and the lighting in the scene is just dark, and there's loud rain, which takes over the scene, and just blue colors and dark colors, and it just shows kind of the ominous mood of what's to come for John Wick. This resonates in recent culture just through the alienation, because it's just such a persistent theme throughout history. During the COVID lockdowns, a lot of people felt claustrophobic because they weren't able to leave their homes, and claustrophobia is just an element of noir. The ending sequence, so there's a lot of sunset imagery. It's just warm colors that haven't really been seen earlier in the film. And he's finally free from the High Table's wrath and has escaped his claustrophobic world. So he beat the Marquise, but he will also be dying, and so he's now free. The shot is open and shows the whole building behind him. It shows him keel over on the steps in front of the Sacré-Cœur, cuts to Winston and the Bowery King at his grave. At the beginning of the film, Wick goes to the desert, and the character says, "None of us can escape who we are. The only way John Wick will ever have freedom or peace now or ever is in death. Only in death can he truly be free, because he's constantly brought back into this life of an assassin." The end of the film is noir, as it does not give the viewer resolution. There is an incomplete feeling. The ending is not happy, as the antihero has died, thus the ending reflects the fatalistic and nihilism found in noir.